Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So we would like to start this international seminar, so please take your seats. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this second international seminar mandated by Resolution 5133 of the Human Rights Council on National Mechanism for Implementation, Reporting and Follow-up, following the first one that was held in 2023. As you may be aware, this seminar has been postponed to the ongoing liquidity crisis affecting the United Nations, which has also impeded us from funding the travel of participants. Despite the challenges, we are pleased that this seminar is taking place, and would like also to welcome those who are online following it through the UN webcast broadcast. And this is important as the seminar aims to facilitate sharing of experiences on national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up. As outlined in the agenda, today's seminar will be structured around 3 thematic sessions. The first session will explore the modalities for human rights implementation at the national level, with a particular focus on the role of national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up in this regard. The second session will focus on digital tracking tools and databases, which are complementary solutions to support effective implementation. And the last session will address the second mandated element of the Human Rights Council Resolution 5133, namely the Knowledge Hub on NMIRFs, so national mechanisms. This session will also consider the broader outlook of the NMIRF agenda within the Council's work. Before I move to the opening segment, allow me to share some housekeeping rules. We would like to encourage interactive discussions, and to facilitate this, we kindly ask that each intervention be limited to 3 to 5 minutes, and time permitting, speakers may be invited to contribute more than once. Also, given the nature of this seminar, priority to speak will be given to states' representatives, and at the same time, due to paramount role of civil society, national human rights institutions, and other stakeholders in engaging with the human rights mechanisms, we are also keen to hear their perspectives and suggestions. This event is interpreted in English, French, Russian, and Spanish, and as well as in international sign language. And we kindly ask participants to articulate clearly to facilitate the work of interpreters. And as I mentioned earlier, the event is webcasted on the UN Web TV following today's schedule. So allow now me to move to the opening segment with the representative of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the permanent representatives of Paraguay and Brazil as the sponsors of the Resolution 5133, and a representative of La Délégation interministérielle des droits de l'homme of Morocco. So I have now the pleasure to invite Mr. Mahaman Siseguru to deliver his opening remarks.
Bonjour à toutes.
Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, ambassadors, Mr. Ambassador of Paraguay, Mr. Delegate of the Interministerial Delegation of Morocco, Mr. Minister Council of the Permanent Mission of Brazil, delegates, guests, distinguished participants. On behalf of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to this workshop on national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up, known by the acronym NMIRF. At the outset, I would like to hail the role played by the group of friends of NMIRFs in the Human Rights Council, spearheaded by Portugal, as well as stakeholders such as Universal Rights Group, whose involvement has given visibility to these mechanisms within Human Rights Council discussions and beyond. As you know, the main goal of this workshop, mandated by the Human Rights Council in Resolution 51/33, is to provide a space for dialogue, reflection, and exchange about the setting up and operation of national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up. In a context where international obligations in the area of human rights, sustainable development, and good governance are increasing, the need to have effective, coherent, and sustainable national entities to ensure their implementation is becoming an undeniable priority. NMIRFs as a tool for coordination, follow-up, and reporting play a strategic role in consolidating the rule of law and achieving the international commitments of states. Today, our discussions will deal with best practices in terms of states meeting their obligations in the area of human rights and means of implementation at the national level to achieve this. And also, we will deal with shared challenges. In this regard, we will have the privilege of hearing not just from states, but also from stakeholders and experts in the area, including Dr. Azadeh Shalabi on national action plans. We will also be able to see how states are trying to improve coherence with other implementation and monitoring processes at the national level, including in the area of sustainable development. We will focus particular attention on the use of digital tools, databases, and the way in which NMIRFs can promote better coherence between national implementation and follow-up processes. In this regard, I would like to warmly thank Ms. Nala Haidar, Chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Mr. Felix Kirschmeier of the Geneva Academy, and His Excellency, Mr. Omar Zniba, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Morocco, for having agreed to moderate the various sessions today. Distinguished participants, through Resolution 51/33, the Human Rights Council also requested the OHCHR to create a virtual platform through which national mechanisms can have access and through which they can exchange information on best practices. The platform should also, according to the mandate established by the Council, support an online community of practice. These developments are part of recommendations made following the regional consultations of 2021, which several of you participated in. Ladies and gentlemen, in spite of the liquidity crisis that the United Nations is facing, and with a view to creating synergies between activities mandated by Council resolutions, significant efforts have been made to develop a shared knowledge platform on human rights to host the various databases that are being created. This platform will host not only the platform for national mechanisms, but also an online register of technical cooperation and capacity building activities in keeping with recommendations from the UPR, and the platform on economic, social, and cultural rights as called for under Resolution 54/22. The OHCHR has worked on a minimum level of content that we could make available to states and other stakeholders, and we hope that this will be in October.
Dear participants, regular engagement by states is essential to the success and impact of all international humanitarian mechanisms. Increasing this engagement has been central in strengthening the UN treaty body system and is equally key to the effectiveness of special procedures and the ongoing fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review. This engagement requires strong national capacities to coordinate report preparation and follow-up on review by appropriating and implementing recommendations. Strengthening national mechanisms can thus become pivotal in realizing human rights at the national level. Only through genuine engagement with all human rights mechanisms will states achieve the full potential of the UN human rights system. The national mechanism for reporting, implementation, and follow-up should therefore adopt an all mechanisms approach. Distinguished participants, the Universal Periodic Review has seen a growing number of recommendations on establishing or strengthening national mechanisms. From 11 recommendations in the second cycle, we recorded 160 in the 30 cycle, and already 141 recommendations have been made in the ongoing fourth cycle. Also, since we organized the first seminar under Resolution 2017/33, attention to national mechanisms consolidation has already grown, especially with support from the group of Friends of National Mechanism for Reporting, Implementation, and Follow-up. In September last year, sponsors of the annual resolution on capacity building and technical cooperation in human rights decided to focus the 2024 resolution on complementarity between national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up, and the national human rights institutions. The annual panel discussion and the agenda item 10 of the Council is scheduled to take place on Friday, 4th July in the afternoon. Similarly, Resolution 57/12 talk about how national mechanisms address decentralized systems in report drafting and recommendation follow-up. An event on this topic will take place on 23rd July in Geneva in a hybrid format. We warmly welcome all effort undertaken by state to encourage cooperation on national mechanisms. This includes the creation of the international network, the 10th Glion Human Rights Dialogue held last October in Marrakesh, and which led to the adoption of the Marrakesh Guidance Framework, as well as the regional and cross-regional initiatives. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, including through the voluntary fund of the UPR implementation and the capacity building program on human rights treaties, is happy to contribute to these initiatives. Overall, 17 national mechanisms have been created or strengthened over the past 5 years. It pains me to say that this effort have, however, been seriously impacted by the ongoing liquidity crisis. For example, our capacity building program has had to drastically curtail its support to the establishment and strengthening of national mechanisms due to the liquidity crisis, while the demand for such support has only increased. Before concluding, I would like to add that in parallel to our effort to strengthen national level mechanisms, we must also make sure that the work of international human rights mechanisms, meaning special procedures, treaty bodies, and the UPR, is predictable, accessible, effective, and sustainable through solid funding bases, and that they provide clear, focused, and coherent recommendation that the national mechanism for reporting, implementation, and follow-up can follow up on. These are amongst the key goals that we pursue as we support human rights mechanisms. And I believe the path ahead is full of opportunity, and with shared commitment and vision, there is no limit to what we can achieve together. Together, we are not just meeting challenges, we are building something extraordinary. On this note, I wish this seminar great success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Allow me now to turn to His Excellency, Mr. Mario Raul Cano Ricciardi, Ambassador Permanent Representative of Paraguay to the United Nations at Geneva. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellencias, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, it's an honor for me to extend a warm welcome to all of you and to formally open this seminar designed as an arena for the exchange of practices and promotion of networks of cooperation. This meeting happens as we tackle challenges presented to us as states who have duties to promote, protect, and to guarantee human rights, which means that we have to constantly update what we do, not only to provide responses and reparations that are appropriate in nature, but also we need to anticipate and prevent potential challenges. First of all, may we express our concern about the difficult situation currently gripping the office because of the budget crisis. However, precisely because of this crisis, we consider that today more than ever it is crucial that we strengthen our commitment to the international human rights system. This is not only a form of concrete support, but it is also something that sends a clear message about the relevance and value of the work done in the area of the promotion, protection, and respect for human rights worldwide. In this respect, the national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up, namely NMIRF, had already been adopted as a crucial form of recommendation in the OHHR report on the strength of the 2012 treaty body strengthening process, and this in recognition to the valuable work they provide for the coordination and drafting of reports, as well as in the cooperation with regional and international human rights mechanisms. However, I would like to highlight the fact that its role goes way beyond mere technical functions. The NMIRFs also contribute significantly to promoting and consolidating human rights cultures worldwide, because they involve and empower various areas of society and they promote better knowledge thereof. Furthermore, they play a crucial role in the strengthening of the rule of law because they facilitate dialogue and coordination between various government actors, but also between these various government actors and the other bodies that do not belong to the government, namely national human rights institutions and civil society. As is well known, Paraguay has for a number of years now demonstrated its firm commitment to and cooperation with international promotion, protection, and human rights mechanisms. This has given rise to the creation domestically and the promotion internationally of governmental structures that facilitate the drafting of reports, as well as the follow-up of an implementation of the recommendations stemming from the various bodies within the universal system and the regional system for human rights. In this context, my country, together with Brazil, has driven forward this initiative, and this in order to enjoin other member states to create more arenas for dialogue, which can contribute to the improvement of the operation of these mechanisms. We seek to strengthen and enrich the elements we've already identified, and chiefly through the exchange of information between peers, as well as the strategic use of digital platforms and tools, and through active international cooperation. The seminar due to take place today will provide an arena within which you can exchange experiences about the role played by the NMIRFs in implementation in general, and especially through its capacity to manage information. As an outcome of this day, we hope we will identify and document best shared practices, as well as the challenges we face in the following up on the human rights recommendations. And we also hope we'll be able to use this opportunity to exchange and explore ideas that help us to improve the content of the Virtual Knowledge Center embodied in Resolution 51/33, as well as the future decisions of the Human Rights Council on NMIRFs. Distinguished colleagues and friends, once again, I'm delighted to extend to you a warm welcome to this seminar here today, and say that it is for me a true honor to share this arena with you, namely such a distinguished audience. I am convinced that this day will be enriching and that we'll be able to really use the knowledge, experience, and information that will be shared throughout the day. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I now invite His Excellency, Mr. André Simas Magalhães, Minister Counselor, Permanent Representative of Brazil to the United Nations Office at Geneva, for his statement. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, colleagues, good morning. Please allow me from the outset to extend my greetings to all participants in this important event, which was mandated by the Human Rights Resolution 51/33. We are proud to be part of the core group of this resolution, as well as the group of friends on NMIRFs. In addition, in July 2023, a network of NMIRF focal points was established for the countries of the Community of Portuguese Language Countries. The Brazilian government has reiterated on several occasions its commitment to NMIRFs. These mechanisms are essential to support the implementation of international human rights recommendations, to strengthen interinstitutional coordination, and to promote public policies aligned with our international commitments. They also contribute to fostering dialogue, international cooperation, and technical assistance. I would like to take this opportunity to provide you an update on the development of our national system for monitoring international human rights recommendations, called the CIMORI Brazil program, which is based on a bilateral cooperation with Paraguay. CIMORI Brazil is being developed as a pioneering mechanism, designed as a key tool for incorporating international human rights obligations and recommendations into national practice and translating them into concrete public policies. Its primary purpose is to prepare reports for international and regional human rights systems, monitor obligations arising from treaties and international recommendations, and promote the implementation of such recommendations and international rulings. CIMORI enables governments, federal entities, civil society, and other relevant actors to systematically, structurally, and transparently track progress in implementation of these recommendations, facilitating transparency and accountability. CIMORI will also support the diagnosis of obligations and recommendations, as well as the development of implementation plans aimed at interinstitutional coordination and strengthening public policies. A crucial component of this mechanism is the CIMORI Focal Point Network, which will involve the participation of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, in addition to councils, federal entities, and especially civil society, which will be able to monitor the progress and take part in building the reports and implementation plans. To ensure the effective dissemination of obligations and recommendations within the state institutions, the continuous training of the network is planned, with a view to strengthening institutions and public policies. The central goal is the dissemination of international obligations within institutions, aiming to reinforce a human rights culture within the Brazilian state. In the second half of 2025, the program will enter a testing phase. We also hope to establish its steering committee in the near future. The official launch of the CIMORI Brazil is scheduled for the first half of 2026. To conclude, I would like to express our appreciation to the ongoing cooperation with Paraguay, whose monitoring mechanism is considered a model in South America. In May 2024, during a meeting of high-level authorities on human rights of Mercosur in Asunción, a bilateral cooperation agreement between our two countries was signed for the implementation of CIMORI. In the first semester of 2025, a Brazilian technical mission to Asunción was carried out within the framework of our cooperation agreement. We also welcome the fruitful ongoing dialogue between our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and entities interested in NMIRFs and CIMORI, such as the Coletivo RPU and the National Human Rights Council. The Brazilian government firmly believes in the importance of active participation from the public, civil society, and non-governmental organizations in the formulation, implementation, and evaluation of public policies in Brazil, including in the context of NMIRFs. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like now to hand over to Mr. Mohamed El Habib Belkouch, General Delegate of the Interministerial Delegation of Human Rights, Kingdom of Morocco, for his statement in this opening segment. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, honourable guests, it's a pleasure for me to be here this morning amongst you at this significant seminar, which is a new landmark in the process to develop and strengthen national mechanisms, that is the NMIRFs. Today, I would like to thank the High Commissioner, his Office for Human Rights, for having organised this encounter. May I also pay tribute to the crucial role it plays in supporting national mechanisms and its constant effort for cooperation for follow-up on international commitments which states have in the area of human rights. The development of national mechanisms for implementation, reporting and follow-up is a commitment shared between all of us, and the Kingdom of Morocco attaches crucial importance there too. From as early as 2011, my country set up a national mechanism devoted to this very mission, namely the Interministerial Delegation for Human Rights, thus anticipating the appeal launched in 2012 by the then High Commissioner for Human Rights to the states for them to create such a mechanism. Morocco, it was also cited in the study published by the High Commissioner in 2016 as one of the rare states that has an institutionally independent mechanism. Therefore, Morocco is fully subscribed to the international efforts designed to promoting these mechanisms as a crucial component of the international human rights architecture and a key interlocutor of UN mechanisms. The adoption of the Marrakesh Declaration in December 2022 was a major step forward in this commitment. From the first seminar on this mechanism organized by Morocco, this declaration established a joint vision for their promotion by calling for the creation of an international network designed to institutionalize cooperation, peer-to-peer dialogue, and the sharing of experiences. It is in this same spirit that Morocco, together with Paraguay and Portugal, strived to develop the international framework whilst creating an environment for strengthened cooperation. This joint determination was expressed officially in 2023 through the commitment voiced in the context of the celebration of the 75th anniversary of the Declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UDHR. This collective commitment in 2024 in May was given reality through the holding of the second international seminar organized in Asunción in Paraguay, with the adoption of the declaration establishing the network and the accession of 24 states. Morocco, represented by the DIDH, was elected unanimously to be the executive coordinator for the network. Furthermore, it hosted the second dialogue in Marrakesh in October 2024. That was a crucial moment which led to the adoption of the Marrakesh steering framework as a basic reference document, which is an integrated roadmap resting on good practices and the lessons learned in order for a better and sustainable implementation of these mechanisms worldwide. In assuming its role as coordinator, Morocco is leading the process to develop the plan of action for the network. A draft for this plan was adopted by the Executive Committee in order for it to be formally adopted at the third international seminar planned to take place in Lisbon at the end of this year. The current seminar is a valuable opportunity for us to enrich what is already being done, to strengthen synergies, to pool efforts from the various stakeholders also. It calls for us to collectively think about the development of innovative tools to gather and exchange data, to coordinate between ministries, between institutions, and to mainstream international commitments on public policies. The exchange of experiences and good practices will be an important leverage to give a full lease of life to this international effort. We are facing many challenges today, and therefore we must scale up our efforts to strengthen the effectiveness and resilience of our international human rights protection systems. As far as it is concerned, the Kingdom of Morocco remains resolutely committed to continue to strive together with its partners to ensure that these new mechanisms be recognized as an uncircumventable pillar of the international promotion and protection system nationally and internationally. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank once again the distinguished representatives for their intervention during this opening segment, which is now closed. And as we move to the first interactive panel of the first session of the day on practices on modalities for human rights implementation at the national level, I'd like to invite Mrs. Nahla Haidar, chairperson of the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, as well as the 4 esteemed panelists representing Uzbekistan, Paraguay, Gambia, and Armenia to join the podium. And please also kindly bring your nameplates. Thank you.
Distinguished representatives, dear participants, I would like also to welcome you to this first session, which is devoted to the efforts deployed at the national level by state parties to implement their human rights obligation. We heard this morning several interventions from the perspective of different state parties on how they have been tackling the coordination at the national level. And I think as a chair of a treaty body, for me, this seminar is so important because whatever we do does not reach the country in terms of impact becomes meaningless. So the seminar is of such an importance because it looks at how states can implement their treaty obligation, all those concluding observations they receive at the national level, as well as, of course, the challenges in that process that they may be facing, but also, as was said this morning, to identify the best practices. This morning, we will have two panels, followed by interventions from participants. The first panel will look into modalities for implementation through national human rights action plans, thematic action plans, mainstreaming of recommendation into sectoral policies. We will discuss what works and what may be the existing challenges and how to overcome some of them. The second panel will look at the role national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up can play to contribute to a coordinated implementation at the national level. I do encourage participants to raise their nameplates or country plates should they want to intervene. The list of speakers is open as of now. Our first panel, therefore, is entitled Practices on Different Modalities for Human Rights Implementation at the National Level. And without a further ado, we will start with the first panel composed of Mr. Akmal Saidov from Uzbekistan, National Center of the Republic of Uzbekistan for Human Rights, Mr. Ricardo Ortega, Department Chief, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Paraguay, Mrs. Bafu Zheng, Human Rights Counselor, Permanent Mission of the Gambia, Mrs. Sofia Margarian, Head Division of Cooperation with Monitoring Bodies in the Human Rights and Humanitarian Issue Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia. I welcome you all to this panel. And this panel will aim to answer 3 questions, which I will be asking each of the panelists. And I'd be grateful if panelists can limit each intervention to 3 to 5 maximum each time. And I would like to start by giving the floor to Mr. Akmal Saidov. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, moderator. Excellencies, participants, and ladies and gentlemen. On this occasion, I would like to extend my sincere congratulations on the 80th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Charter and the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. These 2 historical milestones in the advancement of human rights and gender equality. I want to answer briefly for 2 questions, and in the second part of my speech, I want our lessons and concrete suggestions. Let me share Uzbekistan's experience in the creation and development on the national mechanisms for reporting and follow-up. In recent years, Uzbekistan has taken systematic and consistent steps in this direction, forming a national model that covers both legislative, institutional, interaction with civil society institutions, educational, monitoring, and international aspects. In the legislative measures under the new constitution, for the first time, national human rights institutions were initiated in our constitutions. The first national strategy for humans we adopted in 2019-20. Second, institutional measures. A system of national human rights institutions has been formed in Uzbekistan, which has become for the first in Central Asia. In accordance with UN recommendations, Uzbekistan on December 2018 put into effect a national mechanism for reporting and follow-up, expanding the powers of the National Center for Human Rights. Third, interaction with the civil society institutions. Uzbekistan proceeds from the fundamental understanding that the sustainability and effectiveness of the national mechanism in the field of human rights are impossible without an active participation of civil society. Fourth, educational. I would like to note that Uzbekistan has become the first state in Central Asia to join the World Program for Human Rights Education. In this regard, the National Program for the Implementation of the Provisions of the UN Declaration on Human Rights Education and Training has been implemented. National Program for Human Rights Education within the fourth phase without World Program. And fifth, monitoring. An important addition to this is the establishment of a parliamentary commission to monitor the national sustainable development goals and targets of the Republic of Uzbekistan for the period up to 2030. The government of Uzbekistan has undertaken 60 national goals in 125 targets in this field. 6. International aspects. Uzbekistan is a party to 7 of the 10 core UN Universal Human Rights treaties and consistently fulfills its obligations to submit national reports to relevant treaty bodies. Up to date, more than 50 national reports have been submitted covering any plan. We presented 4 our reports under the UPR. And in October 2020, with the assistance of UN Office High Commissioner and UN Development Program, the National Human Rights Center launched the National Recommendations Tracking Database. And we have some lessons. Among the challenges is need to strengthen, first, human and institutional capacity. Second, ensuring sustainable participation of all sectors of society. And third, adoption of international standards to national conditions. And our 3 concrete suggestions. First, we propose to strengthen the global and national exchange of experience between national implementation and reporting mechanisms. In this sense, we highly appreciate in the recent steps in this direction, the adoption of the ASEAN Declaration on the establishment of the international network for national mechanisms. Second, we consider it appropriate to intensify the development of regional interaction platform. In this regard, we propose considering the possibility of holding a regional forum on the implementation of international human rights obligations in Central Asian countries under the patronage of the Regional Office for Central Asia, Office of High Commission. And third, a necessary condition for the sustainable development national mechanisms, especially in developing countries, remains the systematic development on their institutional and human rights capacity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Saidov. And I would like now to move to the questions before formulating the question, before giving the floor to Mr. Ortega. You are the department chief at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Paraguay, and thank you for taking part in this panel. But can you please explain what has the state put in place at the national level to implement its international human rights obligations, including recommendations stemming from UN bodies? Please explain the approach taken from the National Human Rights Action Plan, for instance, or the mainstreaming into sectoral policies. We have heard from Mr. Saidov a summary of the situation in Uzbekistan, but here I would like to dig a little bit more with you on how you have approached it in Paraguay. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haidar. Gracias a todos.
Thank you, all of you, for having come here this morning to this significant seminar, because for us as a country, it's quite a relevant issue. So we're very grateful to OHHR for having organized this seminar also. So to respond to this question, in our case, we need to know the history of Paraguay. For 35 years, we had a dictatorship. In 1989, we came back to democracy and we launched a process of openness wherein we adopted the main international human rights instruments, and we also started from the year 2000 to reform our institutions involving the three powers of the state and other public bodies, following the leadership of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the Ministry of Justice as well, because there was a lack of a real lead ministry in the country. So these ministries did it together. In 2009, we established a coordination body. The Network for Human Rights of the Executive is what it is called, in order to articulate policies and plans and programs on human rights, which involved the executive chiefly, but also made it possible for other powers of the state to join the process. This institutional framework was a landmark in mainstreaming human rights in public policies in our country. Now, on this institutional basis, namely the network of the executive, in 2013, we launched the National Human Rights Plan as a comprehensive public policy on human rights. We developed 4 plans of action to be able to put into practice this national plan. And we also developed sectoral policies and plans and programs and targeting challenges we had and which we still have and which most of you countries also have today in relation with vulnerable persons and sectoral plans for women, boys and girls and adolescents, indigenous peoples, the elderly, older persons, people with disabilities, the youth, migrants, all of whom we've covered by our sectoral programs covering their main rights, namely education, health, access to justice, and also specific challenges on issues such as population development, trafficking persons, and social protection and care policies. With the experiences we had accumulated up until then, and in the face of the difficulties we had identified as of 2011, we started to work on technological tools. That year, we launched the searcher for recommendations, which sought to systematize all of our recommendations, making it easy to access them, see them, consult them online. I'm speaking here of the recommendations. From this search engine, thanks to the UN in Paraguay, we created our national mechanism, which is the CIMORE Plus, which was consolidated in 2015 through a decree adopted by the government with its own working methods and the manual for the use of the online platform that supports the CIMORE Plus. So we have this network established in 2009 by the executive, which was supported now by these new technological tools. And now, once again, we have 2 elements. We have the human element on the one hand, which is this network, which today has around 130 public officials, 70 institutions more of the state, and the technological aspect, namely the software. This platform, which helps us to reduce or to increase what we do to manage information, streamlined procedure for our information management. So in summary, in Paraguay, we tackle things progressively. We first started with our institutions and our ratification of treaties and international instruments. Then we worked on our institutions and created our human rights network. And then we embodied the technological aspect and headed towards creating a national mechanism. In terms of domestic instruments, we also first developed a general policy on human rights, which was then disaggregated into a number of different initiatives, thematic initiatives to meet our human rights challenges. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ortega. I would like now to turn to my next speaker, Mrs. Bafu Jeng from Gambia. And if you wish, I can reformulate the question, but it's the same one, which is, what has the state put in place at the national level to implement its international human rights obligation, including recommendation from UN bodies, and which was your approach? National human rights action plans, mainstreaming into sectoral policies. We heard that Paraguay, in fact, used both, but let me learn from you. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The same as Paraguay, we also adopted both. But in the meantime, let me thank you for giving us the opportunity to share the Gambia's national efforts to implement its national human rights obligations. Since the democratic transition in 2017, the Gambia has actively re-engaged with international human rights systems following decades of authoritarian rule, which have repressed our engagements with the UN bodies. We have taken a comprehensive approach since 2017 by strengthening institutions, enacting legal reforms, and participating in international mechanisms, and mainstreaming human rights across government policies and programs. One of the most significant milestones for the Gambia was the establishment of the National Human Rights Commission in 2018, fully compliant with the Paris Principles and now holding A status. The NHRC serves as a critical bridge between global standards and domestic implementations. Its mandate includes advising government on compliance, reviewing laws and practices to align with international norms, monitoring reporting obligations, and promoting public awareness and access to justice. The Ministry of Justice serves as the focal point for coordinating human rights reporting and interaction with UN mechanisms. And together with the National Human Rights Commission, it plays a central role in aligning national priorities with international commitments. Our engagement with the UN mechanisms, particularly the UPR, has been particularly strong. Supported by the UPR Trust Fund and UN agencies, the Gambia has participated in all 4 UPR circles. Across these circles, the Gambia has now received 855 recommendations, of which we have accepted 641 recommendations. This is a reflection of our political will and commitment to reform. And these recommendations have driven tangible outcomes, including the enactment of the Children's Amendment Act prohibiting child marriage in 2015.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, distinguished colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to today's important discussion. As a country that has only recently established a national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up, we are happy to join this dialogue, both to share our early reflections and, equally importantly, to learn from the valuable experiences of others. While our very own national mechanism is still in its early institutional phase, Armenia has been, nevertheless, an active contributor to the international human rights reporting system, where we uphold multiple international and regional obligations. Armenia is a state party to 17 out of the 18 core international human rights instruments identified by the OHCHR. And over the past year, our country underwent a number of major reviews, including interactive dialogues under the UN treaty bodies, and also the national periodic reports that we submitted under a number of regional conventions, including those under the Council of Europe. So having undergone all these multiple reviews, including most recently our fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review at the Human Rights Council, rights implementation and the Sustainable Development Goals, which are two distinct frameworks that are nevertheless deeply interrelated, sharing core principles such as inclusion, participation, non-discrimination, and accountability. Mechanisms such as treaty bodies, special procedures, and the Universal Periodic Review. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, by contrast, is a political commitment, voluntary in nature. These two agendas are thus rooted in distinct legal traditions, institutional mandates, and forms of accountability. That structural divergence in itself creates practical coordination challenges. Second, institutional setups at the national level reflect this broader separation between the human rights and development spheres, and responsibilities for human rights reporting and the SDG implementation are distributed across different government bodies, each with its own planning cycles, reporting procedures, and focal points. And this has been a national experience in Armenia. And third, this separation of tracks, which also exists across the international system. If countries are expected to breach these agendas domestically, it becomes increasingly important for the United Nations system also to pursue enhanced institutional alignment, fostering coherence through shared guidance, joint programming, and coordinated technical assistance could significantly support more integrated and effective implementation. So both the SDG and human rights frameworks continue to evolve in response to national experiences and changing policy environments. And nearly 10 years into the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, this is perhaps the moment to take a closer look at how these frameworks intersect and where practical synergies can be strengthened. In this regard, national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up could play a key role, serving as institutional platforms or bridges for policy coherence and integration, as their added value extends beyond the technical function of tracking obligations to offering a structured space for sustained dialogue and coordination across ministries, across sectors, and also across policy agendas. Due to their standing nature, they can help align human rights with national planning, support data use, help bridge the gap between human rights commitments and development priorities. Armenia's National Mechanism for Implementation, Reporting, and Follow-up has a standing mandate of its own, established by a formal decree of the Prime Minister in November 2024, and is coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with its permanent secretariat, of which I am a representative, operating under within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Human Rights Department. The mechanism brings together 22 participating government institutions, including line ministries, state bodies, and independent oversight institutions. And beyond compliance and reporting, our ambition is to use the NMIRF as a tool to improve the quality and coherence of implementation. A critical part of this effort is the effective use of data, which includes integrating the national indexes, rights-based indicators, and SDG dashboards to help translate international recommendations into actionable priorities. At this point, I would like to highlight the central importance of capacity building in the effective functioning of national mechanisms for implementation reporting and follow-up. Beyond technical support, this includes fostering knowledge sharing, peer exchange, and inclusive dialogue to strengthen coordination, data use, and meaningful implementation. We greatly value the opportunity to learn from the practical experiences of other member states that have undertaken similar setups, institutional setups, and looking ahead, we of course look forward to dialogues on developing methodologies, indicators, and tracking tools. And we're also appreciative of the continued support from international partners in advancing these important processes and strengthening national capacities. In this context, I would also like to highlight Armenia's ongoing collaboration with the Danish Institute for Human Rights, whose expertise has been instrumental and continues to inform the institutional development of Armenia's NMIRF. I thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation, and I would like to acknowledge and thank Brazil and Paraguay for their leadership in creating this important space for dialogue and exchange. And I look forward to our continued cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Magarian. I look at Mr. Ortega, if he would like to add something on this question, because we have merged them, and then I will proceed with the third question and move to the list of speakers, please. And Mrs. Shalabi as well, intervention. Mr. Ortega, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you. Briefly, on the link or how we connect human rights and our SDGs. What we've done is look at the fact that over 90% of our SDGs are aligned with our the main international human rights instruments, independently of what they are or what they're connected to, which means that SDGs are constructed on the basis of instruments or recognized international human rights instruments that are legally binding in nature. So despite the fact that the human rights instruments are different, our SDGs cover all of our rights: economic, social, cultural, civil, political, and environmental, prevalent in Latin America, and they represent a kind of list of a pending list of what we need to do in the area of human rights. And we have objectives, targets for all of them. Now, on the mainstreaming of human rights in connection with our 2030 development agenda, we in Paraguay make visible these connections through the fact that our national development plan is linked to our human rights development plan. And at the same time, they are very much in tune with the 2030 development agenda. So instrumentally, in terms of public policies, we have established a link between these plans, namely the National Human Rights Plan, linked to the National Development Plan, linked to the tune of 90% to the 2030 Development Agenda. So each and every one feeds back into the other, which is why since 2017, the CIMURE, our national mechanism, embodied these improvements with the launching of its plus version, the CIMURE plus version, which links the follow-up on human rights recommendations with our sustainable development goals. So in CIMURE plus, every recommendation is linked to an SDG, one or more SDGs, depending on what this recommendation covers, which means that when we drive forward or register actions or initiatives to implement a recommendation, at the same time, we are making progress in achieving our SDGs under the 2030 Development Agenda. In this context, the Interinstitutional Commission on SDGs in Paraguay is fueled by the CIMORI Plus information on follow-up of recommendations because they are linked to SDGs. They provide information which fuels back into our national reports. Given that both agendas, despite the fact that they're very different in nature in terms of their legal nature, binding nature, are interdependent. That's the crucial takeaway here. They implement international human rights recommendations, and in doing so, we are making progress on the fulfillment of our 2030 development agenda responsibilities. Once again, this is an appeal. If you support NMIRFs, we are fostering not only the implementation of our human rights commitments, but also implicitly we are ensuring that these recommendations or sustainable development recommendations are also filled. Thank you very much, Mr. Telegros, as the chair.
Because you've already listed a lot of the challenges and the lessons learned somehow, and we are short of time because I would like to give the floor also to some colleagues who are in the room who have asked for the floor, and then we can come back. I take with me one of the very important challenge that many of you have already cited. It is the problem of working in silos. It's the problem of already the system itself working in silos and national system that mirror the system that continue to work in silos, and the opportunity at the same time provided by the NMIRF to break those silos. So I think this is something we have to come back to, and I would like, with your permission now, to give the floor. The first on my list is Mrs. Suliana Tokay from the National Mechanism for Implementation, Reporting and Follow-up from Fiji. And before giving her the floor, I just want to share with you something we just had the opportunity to have in Fiji as a committee. We had a regional session in Fiji where 15 island state parties from the Pacific came together, and we have been able to conduct 3 dialogues. We were so much grateful to the South Pacific community, which has helped in providing us with the resources to organize such an important technical cooperation session. So it's very much linked to what we are discussing here: technical cooperation, capacity building, etc. So I will not dwell on that, but I would like to hear from Fiji on the side of the national mechanism after this excellent event we had in April. Madam, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji reaffirms the central role of the National Mechanism for Implementation, Reporting and Follow-up as a foundational component of our national human rights framework. Fiji ratified all core 9 international human rights treaties and conventions as of August 2019. As with many other small island developing states, Fiji faces unique challenges in fulfilling its international human rights obligations due to capacity constraints and other pressing factors, such as the constant impacts of climate change that often requires diversion of resources. As has been highlighted this morning, the NMIRF provides a vital, coordinated platform that enables us to implement, monitor, and report on recommendations received from the UPR, treaty bodies, and special procedures. It strengthens collaboration across government agencies and with civil society, ensuring that our commitments are effectively translated into national action. Complementing the NMIRF is Fiji's Human Rights Task Force, a multi-agency cross-sectoral body established in August 2024 following Cabinet's approval to provide strategic guidance, coordination, and oversight of our human rights agenda. The task force is led by the Office of the Attorney General, and its membership comprised of representatives from all government ministries, relevant statutory bodies and civil societies, and human rights, and Fiji's Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission as observers. Since its inception, the task force was instrumental in the preparation of Fiji's state report for the 4th UPR cycle, reviewed in 22nd January this year. While the task force is slowly taking form, we believe its central role in strengthening mainstreaming human rights across government policy and ensuring inclusive, transparent, and accountable implementation of international commitments. Madam Chair, Fiji's Human Rights Task Force represents Fiji's unwavering commitment to advancing the promotion and protection of human rights for all Fijians. We remain dedicated to strengthening this mechanism and welcome continued cooperation with our development partners to support our work and long-term sustainability. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor now to a very important actor at country level, one of the lead agencies, UNFPA, who works within the country team in each country and is of a great support to NMIRF. Our colleague, Mr. Baragas from UNFPA, you have the floor for a brief comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for those kind words. In fact, in 2024, UNFPA conducted a global assessment of our engagement with national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up. The findings from this assessment are reflected in a recent publication, which we are, by the way, launching after this session in a side event this afternoon. The publication partnering with NMIRF's Action on Human Rights Recommendations to Advance Gender Equality and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. In total, 48 UNFPA country offices responded to the survey. The main entry point for them has been collaboration with NMIRFs in supporting their coordination role in preparing state reports to international human rights mechanisms with a focus on the UPR and CEDAW reporting. Out of those 48 country offices, 18 of them across various regions have developed partnerships with NMIRFs to support them in coordinating national implementation and tracking of human rights recommendations, with a focus on three main and interconnected areas of engagement. One, strengthening interministerial knowledge and capacity on key issues like sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, and the elimination of gender-based violence and harmful practices, issues that are central to the program of action of the International Conference on Population and Development adopted 30 years ago in Cairo. Number two is strengthening multi-stakeholders policy dialogue, both horizontally across parliaments, NHRIs, NGOs, etc., and vertically, local governments, community-based organizations, traditional and community leaders, and affected right holders groups. And in third place, developing NMIRF's technical capacities in planning and in tracking, monitoring the implementation of human rights recommendations and related development commitments. Given the strong convergence between human rights and development agendas, as it was highlighted by Ricardo in his intervention, in recent years, some NMIRFs have been ensuring coordination across ministries of planning and line ministries to mainstream human rights recommendations in development plans and sectoral policies. When done systematically, human rights mainstreaming can ensure that the specific interventions and policy results are effectively budgeted for and implemented. Human rights mainstreaming can yield mutually reinforcing synergies between NMIRFs and other government entities responsible for development and sectoral policies. Through supporting aligning human rights recommendations with related SDGs and ICPD commitments within their implementation action plans and tracking mechanisms, NMIRFs can benefit from the broader planning and monitoring experience of other government entities. In turn, ministries of planning can benefit from the stronger accountability architecture associated with human rights processes by putting more pressure on line ministries or divisions in government to take effective action on the implementation of government deliverables and the achievement of national development results. In their coordination role, NMIRFs need to strengthen their capacity to apply a human rights-based approach in development planning and public policies. The UN system can be supportive of that, as we have more than 20 years of experience with the development of guidance, training tools, and practices in this area. And based on that, I wanted to translate a question to the panelists in terms of also sharing their experiences in building the capacity to apply human rights-based approaches in development plans and sectoral policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baragas. I have now on my list of speaker Oman and followed by Peru. And I would like to ask you not to register anymore for this morning session because I would like to be able to give the floor to Professor Shalabi, who will be sharing with us a very important project that is being done by the University of Liverpool. But I will take Oman first, followed by Peru. Please, Oman, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam President, honorable guests, and ladies and gentlemen. We would like to thank you for this very important seminar. We represent actually Oman Human Rights Commission, an independent national human rights institution. We believe NHRIs can contribute greatly to the work of national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up to support the Human Rights Council Resolution number 30, 25, and 42 on 30. Here I would like to share Oman NHRI efforts in ensuring that the national mechanisms are as effective as possible. NHRI Oman is a member in all national mechanisms related to human rights obligations as an observer and advisor, and it's an observer and an advisor capacity. This has contributed greatly to the effectiveness of national mechanisms in terms of following up the following the mechanisms, guidelines, tools, and implementing shared practices, best practices. Oman NHRI initiated and established the establishment of national human rights indicators in cooperation with the National Center of Information and Statistics and other relevant bodies, as well as we believe that statistics are the cornerstone of any human rights reports, and we witness a great enhancement to the national human rights reports afterwards in terms of their reliability and effectiveness. The NHRI plays a great role in educating the members of national human rights mechanisms, especially the new members, on the reporting procedures, evaluation of implementation, and best practices related to follow-up. The NHRI of Oman has the mandate of establishing a national human rights strategy. The NHRI ensured that the strategy includes an action plan where national mechanisms receive continuous capacity building programs related to the effective cooperation with international human rights mechanisms, as well as ensuring the effective involvement and engagement of civil society institutions. The NHRI of Oman has recommended through many national platforms to implement the Human Rights Council's recommendation related to establishing a central national mechanism that follows up the implementation of human rights obligations and draft effective national human rights reports. And we are in the progress of having national dialogue in this regard. We believe that NHRIs know best the challenges that face the state in terms of adhering to human rights standards and the functionality of the national mechanisms. Therefore, the structured contributions of NHRI can foster the national efforts and have great impact on the overall human rights situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting perspective on the role of NHRIs. And now I would like to give the floor to Peru, please.
Buenos días. Muchas gracias por...
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Peru, in the context of its international obligations enshrined in human rights instruments, adopted our protocol for NMIRF in August 2020. With this measure, we're institutionalizing the national mechanism for implementation, presentation of reports, and follow up the NMIRF. This mechanism is led by the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights in coordination with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In addition, it has the participation of various national institutions at various levels of government, and also the participation of civil society. This mechanism, national mechanism, works actively to draft national reports on human rights, which are submitted to UN treaty bodies, as well as special procedures, the UPR, and to the various inter-American system bodies. Currently, we are implementing a interoperable tool to manage information. This platform is a virtual platform and will be a means to systematically disseminate recommendations stemming from human rights bodies nationwide, thanks to which we're going to strengthen our national strategy for the monitoring of international recommendations made to us. Thank you very much.
Now, I would like now to offer us the chance to hear from Professor Azadeh Chalabi, who is a senior lecturer in law from the University of Liverpool, who will give us her insights on national human rights action plans. They were referred to in the first presentation of different panelists, and how they can be a tool for implementation at the national level. Professor Azadeh Chalabi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haida. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Recently, I conducted a longitudinal study of 30 years of national human rights action planning. I went through all the plans available in English and developed between 1994 to 2024 to uncover the general patterns, differences, developments, and challenges of these plans. So overall, I went through 82 plans, and theoretically, this research is based on the general theory of human rights action planning, which I developed in my book, including 4 sub-theories. The results of this research is going to come out in the form of a series of articles. One of them is already out and open access, free access, you can download it. So in this article, I explored the 4 key dimensions of national human rights action planning and put forward 13 criteria, and then based on these 13 criteria, I evaluated these 82 plans. So I'm not going to go through the findings of this research because this is available online and you can read. Instead, I'm going to quickly explore the 4 key dimensions of national human rights action planning. So if you can please share the... Yeah. Right. Yeah, so the 4 key dimensions of national human rights action plannings, and then it was that, yeah. Yes, that's great. Thank you. And then I talk about the importance of these plans. So the first element, the first dimension is nationalness. For a national action plan to be a national plan, it requires to focus on national human rights issues. And also it needs to be context sensitive, meaning that it should be developed based on an evidence-based situation analysis. It should take into account all the recommendations received from the treaty bodies, UPR, and special procedures, and ideally should be based on special theory of national human rights action plannings, which take into account special temporal factors of the country concerned. Likewise, national human rights action planning should adopt nationally coordinated approach, which means that it should provide a unique platform for coordination and operational joint work for all national stakeholders. The second dimension is human rightsness, which has 2 sub-dimensions, substantive and procedural. In terms of substance, what is very important is the concept of human rights used in national human rights action planning. In general, there are various human rights discourses that, like anti-human rights discourse, ideological discourse, political discourse. But what we need for an effective national human rights action planning is what I would call scientific discourse of human rights, which is impartial, epistemologically objective, universalistic, based on universal objective values, and consistent with moderate cultural relativism and in line with international human rights law. So what is important is that national human rights action plans do not have to be in alignment with national laws or policies, but rather they are meant to ensure the alignment of national laws and policies with international human rights standards. So if we move with other concepts that I listed here, then it would be more like window dressing rather than an effective planning. The second element of substantive dimension is comprehensiveness, which has to do with the types of rights included. As each country's political, social, historical, economic, and cultural circumstances are different, there is no one-size-fits-all formula for the substance of national human rights action planning. But the key point is that all basic human rights embodied in international human rights documents should have an equal chance of being included in the plan if recognized as a priority in the preparatory phase of planning. The second sub-dimension of human rightness is procedure, about the process of planning. So when it comes to process, national human rights, which is equally important, so a well-designed national action plan is the result of a well-conducted process. So national human rights action plans should be transparent, they should be participatory. Participatory is extremely important to the effectiveness of national human rights action plan. It is a categorical term and has at least 4 dimensions: composition, degree, phases, and levels. In terms of composition, it means that who are participating? Are there only stakeholders who are participating, and or NGOs and or national human rights institutions? That is very important to know whether it is inclusive or not. In terms of degree, to what degree they are participating? Are they genuinely involved in the process of decision making? What my research shows is that most states use consultation and label it as participation. Consultation is important, but it's not enough. In consultation, states ask for comment, feedback, recommendations, but at the end of the day, this is the state who decide which comment should be taken into account and which comment should be ignored. So what we want is an active, genuine, meaningful participation where all the stakeholders can have equal chance to get involved in the process of decision making. Another aspect is phase of planning. In what phase or phases of planning they are participating? One phase, is it preparation, implementation, monitoring, evaluation? What phases? And the last one is the level of participation. Is it only at the communal, at the community level, or it goes at the societal level? Other elements are accountability and empowering. The third dimension of national action planning is actionness. For an action plan to be an action plan, it requires to include specific activities. Again, my research shows that some plans, either they don't include any activities or their activities are very broad and more look like objectives than specific activities. And in that case, I call them legless plans, that they can hardly put anything forward. Other element is time frame. National action plan they need to have time frame, otherwise they would be untrackable. They need to have lead bodies, otherwise they would be ownerless. And the fourth element is planness. For a plan to be a plan, it needs to be forward-looking. Again, my research shows that in some plans they include activities which are either already happened or they are happening and nothing about the future. I call them steel plans. They need to have resources of different types. They need to be, as I mentioned, based on situation analysis. And likewise, they need to include both monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. So based on that, I came up with 13 criteria. So all these dimensions that I just mentioned, they are so intertwined that judging one without taking the other into account is impossible. So a plan with a comprehensive list of human rights as set forth in international human rights documents, if not accompanied by actions, I mean activities, lead bodies, and time frame, become just word on the papers. Similarly, a well-designed set of activities without the human rights dimension becomes nothing more than window dressing. So based on that, I came with 13 criteria that can be used not only for the evaluation of these plans, but also as a guidance for preparing these plans. But now the question is, why do we need national human rights action planning? This is a question that I've been asked quite a lot. If properly designed in a participatory process and implemented effectively, national human rights action planning can be used as a response strategy to the lack of consensus on how to put human rights into practice in a coherent way, not isolated, in a comprehensive way, not selective, in a systematic way, not disorderly, in a proactive way, not reactive. They can be used as a strategy to mobilize a wide range of people and organizations, as well as various resources in support of human rights. activities. They can strengthen existing institutions involved in national human rights action plan implementation. They can raise public awareness of human rights and therefore promote human rights culture in society, and they can give a language of rights to other policies such as UN SDGs. Another key point to enhance the effectiveness of this plan is that National Human Rights Action Plan should not be looked at as a one-set practice, but rather as an institution. I mean national action planning as an established ongoing practice. And in that case, if systematic, participatory and consistent, then they go beyond political parties and can survive a change of government. And political changes cannot delay, retard, or even reverse the course of planning. Likewise, if systematic and participatory, national action planning can be an effective strategy for network building among various human rights stakeholders. This can bring with it innovative solutions. Then it becomes a separate identity from its members and can be used as a tool for developing community capacity, fostering collaboration and trust. And as a separate identity from its members, it combines strength for greater impact. It can bring with it credibility. It can promote accountability and transparency. And all this can be used as a possible and as one possible response strategy against cracks in democracy. And again, and you can imagine that a network like that can also help collaboration in networks, can create synergies as well as regularity and predictability that they can help as well. And when I say cracks in democracies, I mean there is a real possibility that things like authoritarianism, rise of populism, erosion of trust in institutions, and spread of misinformation can come out of democracies. Right, but all this needs support. We need systematic support of the state. We need engagement and dedication of NGOs. We need engagement of national human rights institutions with their unique status. We need technical and financial assistance agencies like UNDP and UNCTs to get involved. We need systematic support and coherent message from the UN human rights bodies, including through the UPR process and treaty body mechanisms. We need systematic support from the OHCHR, which has a distinct role within the UN human rights system, and ideally support from international non-governmental organizations and regional human rights systems. And just quickly to finish, recently we established the first global network on national human rights action planning as a lasting platform to share good practices, challenges, and possible response strategies to enhance the effectiveness of these plans in practice. At the moment, we have members from more than 36 countries, from across the sectors, from state bodies, NGOs, national human rights institutions, academics, also representatives from the OHCHR, Council of Europe, European Commission for Human Rights, UNDP, UN Population Fund, etc. I know some of you already are member of this network, and we had the 3-day event, as in inaugural event of this network earlier this month in Liverpool, and a network like that, which includes not only state but non-state actors, can potentially play a key role. It can be used as a driving force for members and non-members to work with these plans and implementation of human rights in general. It can be used, it can become a capital, a social capital with credibility, with increased influence and advocacy. It can foster collaboration and trust, and can be used as a capacity building platform and a knowledge sharing and enhanced learning platform, with coming up with innovative solution based on collective wisdom, and as a network to use to raise public awareness. So I know some of you already are members, but if you would like to join this network, please email us at nhrapnetwork@liverpool.ac.uk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Azadeh Chalabi. That was a really interesting presentation with a lot of insights. And I would like now to give quickly back the floor to the panelists. I will start with Mrs. Zheng, followed by Mr. Saidov, and then one comment each if you have, but extremely briefly because we have to move on. Mrs. Zheng, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to all the panelists. Just to add, by way of conclusion, that in line with our recognition for effective implementation of international human rights obligations in line with the SDGs. We recognize that it cannot be done in isolation from national development goals. And in that regard, in as much as the government of the Gambia has made notable progress in linking the human rights with the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, although it's still a work that remains in progress, we have noted some challenges. And one of these challenges is that there is no formal national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up. And this limits our ability to coordinate effectively across ministries to harmonize treaty bodies and follow up UPR follow up on the recommendations and ensure coherent action on international recommendations. Therefore, what we have at the moment is ad hoc. We normally create ad hoc interministerial task force that are normally set up when a report is to be prepared. And secondly, resource constraints remains a major obstacle as well, because the implementation of recommendations, whether from treaty bodies or SDG processes, is often underfunded, and technical support is heavily reliant on partners. And this is also another challenge that we are working to rectify. Third, there is an institutional capacity gap, which is that many government staff lack the training in treaty body reporting or rights-based budgeting, and there's also the high turnover of staff and human resource, which really affects the continuity of some of these activities. There's also the data. The data systems are not yet robust enough to support comprehensive follow-ups, and while efforts are underway to improve data disaggregation and digitalization, our current systems are still not fully aligned with the international human rights and SDG indicators, as well as the public awareness remains limited. Many citizens are unaware of the rights enshrined in the treaties the Gambia has ratified. And to address this, we are working actively with members of the National Assembly and civil society organizations who serve as direct representatives of the people through community outreach and sensitization. In conclusion, Madam Chair, I wish to thank you very much as I hand you over the mic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bang. Mr. Saida, please.
Thank you, moderator. First of all, I want to say many thanks to Professor Chalabi for your interesting and analytically report and your insight. Thank you so much. I want to add 2 points. First point, about parliamentary dimension of national implementation and national mechanism of implementation, reporting and follow-up. Uzbekistan initiated the special resolution Assembly General of United Nations on strengthening the role of national parliaments on implementation of SDG. According to this resolution, and by the recommendations of High Commissioner for Human Rights and Interparliamentary Union, we in Uzbekistan established special parliamentary commission on implementation SDGs, and relevant parliamentary committees of both chambers of Uzbek parliament actively contribute to this process, working in coordination with national human rights institutions and civil society. The second point, in Uzbekistan, our approach to NMIRF is not theoretical. It is active, structured, and visible at all levels. Our parliament plays a leading role in all 4 key stages of the UPR and UN treaties process: reporting, review, follow-up, and international cooperation. Parliamentary engagement is supported by close cooperation with national human rights institutions and civil society institutions. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Saidov. Very briefly, the other panelists wish to make a comment, or we can, you wish to? Please go ahead, Mr. Ortega.
Sí,
Thank you very much. Once again, very briefly. Just to follow up on the interesting presentation made by Professor Shalabi, we in Paraguay have focused on our national and implementation and monitoring and follow-up mechanisms. Given how crucial they are, they must be part also of our national human rights plans. They need to be a support component to national mechanisms. There need to be an implementation body also for a national plan, because as time passes, we realize that increasingly it's imperative that we consider national mechanisms not only as a secondary option, but a cornerstone rather of the whole international system for it to work properly, coherently as a whole. Just in closing, may I add, we in Paraguay have always identified challenges which are common to our countries in the region and developing countries in general, and these go hand in hand with limitation of resources, lack of technical experience, sometimes fluctuation of political will, lack of, or rather need to improve coordination. Now, to meet all of these challenges, what we need to do always is to guarantee support, financing, and appropriate resources, especially in these developing countries, which include budgetary, technical, human resources, as well as political support and assistance for capacity building, and also what can be provided by the UN system. So to close, our experiences with NMIRF, it has been very positive, thanks to the UN team and the OHHR focal point and UNDP, UN Women, UNICEF. All of these partners have been extremely helpful to us. So we need to encourage a continuation of such partnership, because when it comes to implementing obligations and recommendations and human rights commitments, all of us have something to do, given that human rights are cross-cutting throughout what we do. Thank you very much indeed.
Very much. I'm sorry we're running out of time. I know everyone would like to hear more from Professor Shalabi, so I invite you now in the short break that we will have to take to enable the second panel to come to the podium to dialogue with her bilaterally, because I think she has a wealth of information to share. And we will be resuming at 12 noon sharp, please, for the second panel. Thank you very much. 10 minutes break. Thank you. Thank you very much, dear participant. We will now move to the second panel of this session on the importance of the national mechanism for implementation, reporting, and follow-up in the implementation agenda. And the panel is composed of Mrs. Fatima Barkan, Secretary General of the Interministerial Delegation of Human Rights from Morocco, Mrs. Maria Bova, expert of the Interministerial Committee on Human Rights, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Italy, and His Excellency Mr. Ivan Ogandolora, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Dominican Republic. But I will start a little bit in the reverse order, like we did a bit in the morning. I'll start with the Ambassador because he will give us a presentation on the NMIRF experience in the Dominican Republic. Then I will proceed to pose my question to my two other panelists so that we focus on lessons learned. Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. The Dominican Republic is grateful for the opportunity to participate in this panel on the importance of national mechanisms for implementation, reporting, and follow-up NMIRFs as key pillars for the effectiveness of the international human rights system. If I may, I would like to briefly share with you our national experience. The Dominican mechanism, namely the Interinstitutional Commission for Human Rights, was established in 2004 by a presidential decree as a result of an international recommendation, and this with the aim of strengthening compliance with our multilateral obligations. Its existence is 20 years old, and it attests to the sustained political determination to institutionalize, systematize, and follow up on the recommendations stemming from the treaty bodies and the Universal Periodic Review. This arena has proven to be crucial to do the following: articulate a coherent state response before international bodies, to promote accountability and promote transparency, to promote the participation of civil society through a consultative committee attached to the Commission, identify structural human rights challenges and propose corrective measures, and also to enhance our visibility and credibility in the international arena. The Commission is currently comprised of over 37 public institutions, including representatives from the 3 branches of government and other parts of the government, which means that it is a true interinstitutional and democratic space or arena. As I was saying, we have a civil society advisory committee or consultative committee bringing together the over 20 NGOs. Thanks to cooperation with the Republic of Paraguay, we have successfully integrated the CIMORED Plus digital system, which has significantly increased our ability to monitor what is being done, and it is aligned with our Sustainable Development Goals. Mechanisms are not only technical structures in our understanding, but they're strategic vehicles for us to be able to translate our international commitments into real progress on the ground. They have been crucial to head towards the creation of an institutional culture of human rights. Despite the multiple challenges we face,
in recognition of the interministerial delegation was a response to evolving human rights instruments. It was creative, and it was responsive to expectations from international mechanisms. and states' commitments. The main reason for the creation of the interministerial delegation can be summarized as I've said, there was an imbalance in our engagement with the international human rights system and government coordination in the area of human rights. We also noted there was a need to ensure effective coordination and follow-up in implementation of these plans. We also noticed a great disparity between the growing participation by Morocco in the international human rights system on one hand, and the work done on the ground on the other hand. And also, another reason is to tap into national expertise to strengthen coordination between the ministerial departments and national institutions, and to involve civil society. Support was also needed for follow-up and implementation of recommendations and observations from international entities, including the UN treaty bodies. For instance, some key figures. We have 6 thematic reports, about 4 periodic reviews, and currently we are preparing for a voluntary review, a periodic report for the 4th cycle, about 1,300 recommendations made to Morocco in this regard. So these are some examples, and we could give you others. For instance, ties to emerging issues and emergence of new human rights topics, and our need to prepare for all the challenges that may come. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bakan. That is indeed impressive. Yes. That many recommendations. That makes us look bad, perhaps, as treaty bodies, because we might be hard on you. But the goal is to lighten the burden and to build a common focus, if you will, for all treaties, and then to specialize more after that. I also wanted to say a few things. What would be interesting is to see how you link international with national.
Madame Barkan would be very interesting. And then
the questions that follow on well from the previous panel. As you know, taking into account the cross-cutting commitments undertaken, also facilitate data collection and actively participating in the drafting of reports and in the implementation of recommendations. The DIDH, as it is known, constantly cooperates with various national and international stakeholders. This allows us to pursue international cooperation and to improve dialogue with national stakeholders, NGOs, parliament, media, universities, promoting a participatory and engaged approach. And this allows us to pursue the local dimension as well. One of the priorities of DIDH was to address the backlog in submission of national reports to UN treaty bodies. This strengthens our country's commitment to respecting its international obligations. The DIDH also plays a key role in facilitating the organization of visits by special procedures and mandates holders. It also prepares official responses by the Moroccan government to individual communications and thematic studies and questionnaires from other UN bodies. The DIDH also coordinates with departments and institutions to provide reliable and harmonized information ensuring visibility for Morocco's efforts. Strategic planning is an important topic raised just a moment ago by Ms. Shalabi, something that has truly gained in importance, especially following the recommendations of the Global Human Rights Conference in Vienna in 1993. Allow me briefly to cover Morocco's experience in drafting and implementing national action plans for democracy and human rights. In terms of implementation and challenges encountered. We continue to pursue our commitments in the area of human rights through participatory governance. The drawing up of these plans came out of an unprecedented national conference that was held in Rabat in April 2008. It brought together more than 1,000 representatives from government, civil society, NGOs and academia. This was unprecedented, and it launched a consultative process lasting 2 years, harmonizing various points of view in a coherent strategic framework. It was methodologically rigorous and inclusive, overseen by a national committee of directors. This committee facilitated regional consultations, supplemented with thematic dialogues on crucial issues such as judicial reform and gender equality. In 2017, the plan was thoroughly revised to align with constitutional reforms following on from 2011, the year of the Constitution, and incorporating international norms such as SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and new priorities such as corporate responsibility, youth and women's empowerment, cybersecurity. These were included, transforming the plan into to a dynamic strategy based on results with performance indicators and a schedule for implementation and responsibilities allocated. Its adoption by the Council of Ministers in 2017 was a decisive step in governance in Morocco. It elevated the plan to a level of public visibility. All ministries and departments are obliged to implement it. Presentation of plans to His Majesty the King in 2019 once again underscored the monarchy's unfailing support for this. The principles of this plan raise public awareness, and we have prioritized strategic dissemination in governmental and university spheres and also among civil society. Implementation was guided by a decentralized approach. It was participatory, ensuring that national objectives matched the local context. This allowed us to ensure that territorial specificities were taken into account in the rollout of the plan, and that this led to the setting up of concrete mechanisms for implementation. In 2020, Morocco held an evaluation of its plans to assess progress made and future challenges. This assessment revealed major challenges such as persistence of disparities between urban and rural areas associated with fragmentation in institutions. This underscored the need to step up coordination and targeted resource allocation, including follow-up and assessment of implementation. On this basis, Morocco continues, and this is something new that I announced at this panel, with drafting a future national strategy for human rights, a comprehensive one. This is an initiative to ensure coherence and continuity of human rights public policy. Through a declaration in Marrakesh, and then this network was set up in May 2024. We have also drawn up the guidance framework of Marrakesh, which was adopted in Marrakesh back in October. This gives an idea of which countries are aspiring to implement these mechanisms. And these are, if you will, the 10 commandments and the principles that we use to implement this. As the interministerial delegate said earlier, in addition to this network in the executive committee, we are also involved in coordination, and an action plan is being drawn up for approval. And I am ready to answer any questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bakan. I like the expression you used about raising public awareness. I think this is something we should all work towards, because this will allow us to address the challenges we're currently facing. You have the floor, Ms. Boba.
Allow me to stress that especially for coordination and information management purposes of relevance are CIDU's composition and mandate, including working modalities. CIDU gathers representatives from basically all or almost all central administration authorities, Presidency of the Council of Ministers, including Department for Equal Opportunities and National Office Against Racial Discrimination, Ministry of the Interior, Justice, Disabilities, Health, Culture, Education, University, Defense, Labor, Environment, and so forth. We also have representatives from the National Association of Italian Municipalities that includes 8,000 municipalities. The Union of Italian Provinces, the State Regions Conference, the Higher Council of the Judiciary, and the National Institute of Statistics, just to mention additional representatives. This inevitably is a key element for performing our activities because the CIDU's mandate naturally relies and refers to the ratification of the main human rights treaties, and this has increasing impact on CIDU's work. The activities have significantly increased accordingly. As per mandate, mention is to be made of the preparation of contribution to UN human rights mechanisms, the organization of country mission by relevant US special procedure mandate holders, as well as from other regional mechanisms from the Council of Europe in particular, the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance, and the Committee on Prevention of Torture. The elaboration of 2 national action plans on women, peace and security and business and human rights respectively. And since the first cycle, the preparation, discussion and follow-up to the UPR exercise. Procedurally, we have developed over time practical working tools, including mailing lists of human rights focal point according to the issue to be dealt with. Specific thematic grids with labor division to be determined in advance according to the issues to be dealt with. We do also set up thematic working groups to gather those administrations that are most concerned with the specific exercise, such as the preparation of a national periodic report, drafting a progress report, contributing to UN studies, preparing the delegation for oral discussion in Geneva, or preparing country mission to Italy by UN special procedure and relevant COE mechanisms. As a way of example, all the administration mentioned earlier on are involved in the UPR process, besides the Parliament, although to a different extent. In this regard, allow me to recall the recent oral consideration of Italy and the UPR for cycle last 20 January. The delegation, including among others MPs and representatives from most central authorities, besides the representative from the State Regions Conference, with a delegation of over 50 representatives. In terms of practices, good practices relating to the above-mentioned modalities and relevant national mechanisms for implementation of reporting and follow-up principle, meaning engagement, coordination, consultation, information management. I also would like to stress and mention under UPR first cycle, as reported in the then UN compilation, that CIDU was defined by the UN as an international best practice. The submission of the midterm report to UPR first cycle, plan for the implementation recommendation, is also of relevance. It was submitted in November 2021, and we greatly benefited from the High Commissioner letter received in May 2020. The High Commissioner letter, its annex, and the relevant UPR matrix allow us to prepare with all the administration, including LRGs, the above-mentioned midterm report / plan for the implementation of recommendation, which takes into consideration the linkage between UPR recommendation and SDGs, and the annex of which is entirely devoted to relevant LRGs good practices. Another good practice concerning information management refers to the UN CIDU reporting guidelines and recommendation, requiring focus on the regional context and statistical data. In this respect, over the years, we try to extensively report on the regional level, and on the occasion of last oral consideration, February 2024, we submitted statistical data covering each and every article, thanks mainly to the National Office of Statistics, ISTAT, being also one of CIDU's members, as I mentioned earlier on. In terms of participatory approach consultation, and as a way of example, since 2016, within the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, CIDU established an open-ended working group 1325. We gather at least 3 times per year, besides preparing inter alia and annual progress reporting with NGOs, academia, trade unions, and so forth. The last 2 action plans were developed taking into account in particular SDGs 5 and SDG 16. And more recently, we launched a public online call to collect proposals in view of the new National Action Plan on 1325 in order to reach out the public audience. As for engagement and coordination, the last periodic country mission by the Committee on Prevention of Torture, the Council of Europe, is of relevance. And we contacted and involved all relevant central and LRGs concerned in view of bilateral meetings that the Committee on Prevention of Torture want to hold, and afterwards when preparing our follow-up report. In terms of additional practices, and as a way of example, during COVID-19 pandemic, CIDO organized jointly with the National Association of Italian Municipalities, ANCI, a specific e-training on the human rights machinery. Attention was paid to international human rights law and all UN human rights mechanisms. The focus on the impact of UN treaty bodies concluding observation, especially the CIDO-related ones, was very useful for cross-fertilization exercises among those municipalities representatives that were attending that specific session. More recently, Italy's MFA and CIDO support and participation in the relevant Bologna expert seminar held in April 2024 is to be mentioned. It focused on national mechanisms, data collection and management, and local and regional governments, the discussion of which will take place during the afternoon session, I understand. Indeed, human rights education is key. In terms of handover institutional memory, besides periodic hearings before relevant parliamentary committees, CIDO annually reports on its activities to the Italian Parliament in accordance with the 1999 legislation. This annual reporting is also available online for dissemination purposes and may also be considered as one of our human rights promotion-related tools. Likewise, of increasing relevance is also CIDO website. And internally, our archive is to be considered too, also in terms of handing over and institutional memory. And I thank you.
Thank you indeed very, very much. This is really extremely interesting, and all the elements I feel like what you have shared with us resonate also with what Professor Shalaby shared with us, and the same applies to Mrs. Barkan. There are many components of inclusiveness, of participation, of bottom-up and top-down interaction. And the fact that you refer clearly to the statistical office being an integral part also makes me think about the work on SDGs, because in fact, at one point, SDG became the property of the statistical office rather than anything else. So it's interesting that this is also taken into account. And I know personally of the interest of Italy in the WPS agenda, and we work also very closely with that. I would like now to be able to give the floor to my list of speakers, which are 3 names that I have. And after that, I would like to seek reactions from experts from the treaty body who have been kind enough to stay with us this morning. So first, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Mara Sousa, Human Rights Counselor of the Permanent Mission of Portugal to the United Nations Office in Geneva. Mrs. Sousa from Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you to the panelists for their statements. Portugal's journey towards establishing an NMIRF began with the recognition that fragmented communication among ministries was hindering effective human rights reporting, with several reports significantly overdue and response rates to requests being low. Before establishing our national mechanism, interministerial coordination was often challenging. Communication was overly formal, colleagues from different entities hardly ever knew each other, and the response rate to requests was low. As a result, Portugal had 7 out of 8 reports overdue at the United Nations. Our NMIRF, the National Human Rights Committee, was then established in 2010 in the framework of the first UPR cycle as a voluntary commitment. Prompted by the need to enhance internal coordination, it was designed to enable smoother reporting and more effective monitoring of our international human rights obligations. The strengthened coordination capacity of the NMIRF enabled it to evolve from a reporting-focused body into a dynamic platform that fosters a strong sense of responsibility across all ministries while advancing the integration of human rights principles throughout the public administration. By fostering streamlined interministerial communication through establishing dedicated focal points and promoting consistent working methods, the NMIRF has enhanced knowledge sharing and ensured greater continuity, even amid staff changes. The strengthening of the NMIRF has also enabled enhanced dialogue with a broad spectrum of stakeholders, including sessions with civil society and the active involvement of the Parliament and the Ombudsperson, who serve as permanent observers and key contributors to the formulation of human rights laws and policies. Currently, 18 governmental areas are represented. Our mechanism operates through a two-tier institutional setup, with each ministry designating two focal points, one at a more senior level and another at a more technical level. Senior focal points ensure timely information flow and facilitate decision-making, while technical focal points provide in-depth expertise and manage regular follow-up. The committee, in its formal setting, chaired by the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, is a flexible structure as it can meet quite frequently with different compositions in working groups depending on the subjects at hand. To allow for effective follow-up at the beginning of each year, each of the 18 governmental areas must identify and commit to at least 3 measures that will positively impact the protection and promotion of human rights. These commitments are compiled and made public, creating a shared vision and set of annual priorities for the committee's work. Then, at the end of each year, the committee reports on the implementation of these commitments, clearly indicating the activities undertaken and results achieved. By systematically tracking the implementation of commitments made by each governmental area, we are able to generate reliable data, foster institutional memory, and promote a culture of results-based management in the field of human rights. It also reinforces trust with our citizens and partners by demonstrating that our actions are aligned with our stated priorities. Managing this vast amount of information without a proper digital tracking system has been a considerable challenge. We are currently in the process of adopting the National Recommendations Tracking Database with the support of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. We believe this platform will be essential to consolidate and track recommendations and national commitments, effectively serving as a living national action plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before giving the floor to the registered speaker, I would like also to propose to all of you, if you wish to take the floor, to raise your flag. And I have 2 speakers aligned now, but we can take additional speakers if there is a desire. And I would like, therefore, to give the floor now to Mr. Pumlani Dlamini, Human Rights Advisor for the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mr. Dlamini, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. From the onset, allow me to thank the OHCHR for organizing this important seminar and for their continued work on human rights issues despite the difficulties they face, which were alluded to us this morning. I also would like to thank the panelists for their informative and insightful presentations. The Human Rights Unit of the Commonwealth Secretariat has been supporting its member states to establish and strengthen national mechanisms for implementing, reporting, and follow-ups for nearly a decade. We have provided technical assistance across Africa, the Pacific, and the Caribbean. And in the past 2 years alone, we have directly supported the establishment and strengthening of 12 or about 12 NMIRFs. And based on our extensive engagement with member states across the region, I would like to just share with the August House a few of our observations. Positively, there is a growing recognition among states that NMIRFs, that these mechanisms enhance intergovernmental coordination, reduce reporting burdens, and improve implementation and monitoring capacities and facilitate stakeholder engagement. Also, encouragingly, many NMIRFs are moving beyond the narrow reporting function and embracing a broader implementation role. Reporting, follow-up, and implementation are distinct but interlinked and kindred mandates that must be executed effectively for meaningful progress. However, there are some challenges that we have observed. As correctly observed by the panelists, despite the benefits of approach in integrating SDGs in human rights reporting, few NMIRFs currently link human rights recommendations with relevant SDGs, and thus they miss the opportunity for a greater synergy. Some Commonwealth members continue to rely on ad hoc mechanisms, while others with formal NMIRF mandates struggle with operational effectiveness due to issues like high staff turnover and limited capacity, highlighting the need for ongoing capacity building. This is already alluded by a number of panelists this morning. To fulfill their implementation mandates, NMIRF requires stronger collaboration from stakeholders, because implementation alone is a mandate which is embroidered in the other mandates of the NMIRFs. But implementation alone would require a stronger collaboration and among the stakeholders. In particular, there's a need to explore how institutions such as the judiciary, parliament, and ministries of finance can have greater engagement with NMIRFs to ensure its effectiveness, particularly in the implementation mandate. We are thankful for the best practices shared in this session to counter some of these challenges, and we are looking forward to hearing from more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lamini. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Ahmed Badr from the Danish Institute for Human Rights. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Danish Institute for Human Rights, we thank you for the chance to reflect on the central role of NMIRFs in advancing the implementation of international human rights obligations on the ground. Over the past decade, NMIRF have become a cornerstone of the national human rights systems. That's by providing standing institutional structure within the government. They allow for coordination across ministries, engagement with parliaments and national human rights institutions, and alignment of international recommendations with the national development priorities. Crucially, NMIRFs are not only reporting tools, they must be mechanisms for change. When properly mandated and resourced and embedded in a whole governmental approach, NMIRFs can support implementation through action plans, tracking systems, and inclusive dialogue with civil society. At the Danish Institute, we have had the privilege to support NMIRFs in many regions. We have seen how, when linked to national planning, NMIRFs can translate human rights recommendations into concrete, measurable results. Yet, despite the progress, implementation remains the defining challenge. Many NMIRFs remain focused primarily on fulfilling reporting obligations, with the mandates and resources geared towards coordination and documentation for the reporting rather than driving implementation. This limited focus undermines the potential to support the real change. We must shift this approach, empowering NMIRFs to move beyond procedural reporting and taking a leading role in the implementation, fully integrated into national planning and evaluation systems. This is where national oversight and accountability institutions become essential. Independent national human rights institutions play a particularly critical role in pushing for meaningful implementation. The recommendations, based on the monitoring and grounded in community realities, offer practical guidance and highlight areas where rights are not being fulfilled. When NMIRF engage seriously with NHRI's recommendations, the results are more strategic, inclusive, and effective implementation. In countries where this collaboration is formalized through shared databases, joint roadmaps, or implementation reviews, human rights follow-up becomes more structured and impactful. Other national institutions, such as parliaments, courts, audit bodies, and civil society also play a vital role in scrutinizing NMIRFs, not only in what they document, but also in what they deliver. This accountability function is increasingly vital as international human rights mechanisms face growing financial, political, and institutional pressure. The strength and the credibility of the national systems and the national institutions will determine whether the human rights standards retain their meaning on the ground. It's no longer sufficient to measure progress solely by the number of reports submitted. What ultimately matters is whether these efforts lead to tangible improvements in people's life and the realization of their rights. The Danish Institute for Human Rights remain committed to supporting countries in building and strengthening their NMIRFs that are not only functional, but also impactful. Systems that close the implementation gap through transparency, institutional partnership, and national accountability. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Badr. And I would like now just to draw a little bit on some of what was said also this morning about the issues of the centrality of National Human Rights Institution to these processes. Just draw your attention that there will be a panel discussion on interaction between NHRI and NMIRF on 4 July from 10 to 12. So I think it is an important synergy that we are seeking. And before I give back the floor to the panelists to try to sum up a little bit the way forward, I would like to listen to one of the experts who has been kind enough to stay with us and see her reaction she followed all the discussions since the morning. Mrs. Carmen Rosa Villa, thank you for being with us. Mrs. Carmen Rosa Villa is a member of the Committee on Enforced Disappearance, but is also a very long-standing human rights person. So she will be commenting more globally. Please, you have the floor.
Muy buenos días.
A very good afternoon to you. Chair, panelists, may I thank you all for this opportunity to hear this morning both panelists, both on the national action plans as well as on the mechanisms. It's very important to hear these experiences, which, whilst different, nevertheless important for the implementation of human rights recommendations, be they recommendations or be they what we actually do on the ground, a reality on the ground, a reality for us states and a reality for societies as a whole, as there are so many different kinds of human rights recommendations stemming from the various treaty bodies. I think it's very important we find common lines of action which enable us to say, not that we have 3,000 or 4,000 recommendations, but rather when we get this information for those treaty bodies to be able to do something about them. And we have many because we have ratified so many. What we need to do is consistently, coherently identify what these recommendations have in common so that we can act concretely and act in a way that is measurable and over a given period of time. Throughout the last few years, I have been a member of the CED, Committee on Enforced Disappearances, and the OHCHR have consistently imposed upon us the creation of mechanisms, as we heard from Mr. Mahaman Sise Guru this morning. These mechanisms need to be coherent and sustainable. Speaking of sustainability, sustainability is not just them not changing over the time. What's important about sustainability is that the people involved need to remain the same. There mustn't be a constant change over or turnover, because often in states, there is no sustainability, because every time a government changes, the public officials change, and we have to start from scratch over and over again. So we need to be able to act sustainably, effectively, and coherently. And when we create the mechanisms, ensure that there is no staff turnover. So staff needs to have the knowledge, not change, and over time make decisions. Now, when you're involved at different levels of government, sometimes things remain on standby. because you constantly have to ask for permission. You have to go up to the minister. You have to escalate up to the president of a commission or a chair of a commission. And that's crucial. You need to enable NMIRFs to decide, to know what they're talking about. And three, the people involved in these mechanisms need to stay for sufficiently long periods of time, so that the public plans and policies are given continuity. That was number one. Number two, this is fundamental, and almost everybody this morning have said it: accountability. It is so important that we give those who are involved in the mechanisms, but also in the citizens themselves, those who follow the work we developed, we need to give back to them the power, be it the academic world, civil society organizations, organization of victims who act or who participate in these matters. We need to give them back this accountability, hand in hand with assessment or evaluation mechanisms. In other words, you need to look what you've done, see if you've done well, how you can improve, and how you can restructure the mechanisms if required, if you find that there have been flaws on the way. Participation is crucial, but not only, it needs to be broad-based participation. It needs to be real inclusion, real participation. So you need to take into account all the contributions from all the stakeholders involved, stakeholders or institutions who are part and parcel of the NMIRF, which means you need to listen to people, you need to take into account opinions, you need to assess them and create then within the groups arenas for discussion, which will enable those who participate to see that their participation has been truly taken into account. Their participation is real and taken into account. One of the major challenges is the following. When you develop your plans of action should not be merely seen as governmental, belonging to the government of the time. These plans of actions are state plans of action, not governmental plans of action. They should steer a course which will remain over time. These plans of action should be able to define what the country needs, what the state party needs, so that its commitment stemming from these constructive dialogues can be a reality. When I say constructive dialogues, I mean between states parties and us, the treaty bodies. That was the first challenge. Another challenge we have identified in the mechanisms is the need to have parliamentarians in your NMIRF. You need to have members of the legislative branch of government. And this is consistent with what we have noted over the years, and that is harmonization, legislative harmonization. It's always an issue when you have to get the support of Parliament. Then you need to look at how states do that. How do they domesticate international human rights commitments? And when they have to, for example, adjust their criminal code, their youth code, the code on the youth, the code of criminal proceedings, or procedure rather. And also, how do they amend their constitutions? For example, with the CED, there is this right never to be disappeared. That is a fundamental right. How do you embody that in your constitution? All of these are questions that need to be asked and answered. Another challenge, the third one, is the following: coordination, interministerial coordination. That is a challenge. And plans of actions should transcend ministries. They should trickle down to local government, as Italy said earlier on. The town halls, the municipalities, the communities all need to have their voice heard, so that these national plans are not solely the purview of capitals and major interests, who very sadly are often only located at the center of government, but they need to trickle down to the local grassroots level so that or the citizenship can benefit therefrom. And also, very emphatically, can I say that the participation of the legislative branch of government must happen with the parliamentarians knowing about human rights. Human rights must not be politicized in the process. Parliamentarians must need to understand and be fully committed to human rights and committed to what the state party has committed itself to do under if the state party has ratified a convention. I'm very grateful to all the presentations we've heard this morning. And to conclude, I would like to say that national human rights action plans should remain live action plans. They're not ones that are engraved in stone and never change. Rather, they are plans of action that need to be continually reassessed, which is why it is crucial that we absolutely transparently identify real indicators that measure whether they've been fulfilled or not. And we need to know when that has not happened, we know why, which is why one of the major challenges that people face, and I'll conclude with this, is that recommendations need to be seen as roadmaps for states, for them, for each and every commitment to become a reality when states parties have ratified international human rights treaties. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Chalabi, Dr. Chalabi, for your presentation, madam. That revealed very clearly what we can all together do, because we're not just bodies and states here. We are individuals as human beings. You have told us what we within the human rights protection system can do to make sure it works and is a reality for each and every person that lives on this planet. Thank you very much indeed.
Very, very much for this intervention, dear colleague. It is difficult to conclude this session. It was so intense and so full of information. I think that we are all of us in agreement that the fact that there is a group of friends for an NMIRF, the fact that we have a network, the fact that we have a guidance node, it is a living instrument. It's a living entity, institution. And it's by doing things that we progress. And I see somebody seeking the floor over there. No, not Mexico. Is it Mexico? Sorry. Okay. Okay, floor, but please for 1 minute because we have to close. I'm so sorry, but I wish you had requested the floor earlier. Please introduce yourself.
Hola.
Hello, thank you very much indeed for giving me the floor. Arturo Guerrero Sasueta is my name. I'm from Mexico, from the judiciary in Mexico. We will be taking the floor this afternoon, but I just wanted to say one thing now. I was struck by many things you said this morning, but in particular, some of the ideas referred to by the person who took the floor behind me, namely the need for us to take ownership of recommendations truly and adopt processes that are transformative in nature. And connecting this with 2 points that were put on the table by the two experts, Ms. Carmen Rosa from CED and the chair from CEDAW, both of whom talked about the importance of not only have a tick box exercise, but rather look at methodologies that have led us to the results. And this is to respond to the actions and plans that we adopt. If we want to achieve results, huge efforts must be made, which are invisible in the process, because we are focusing just on the tick box exercise rather than having the real in-depth conversations we need to have. And I'll conclude with this. In Mexico, to finalize processes that really change the judiciary in the areas of, for example, persons of disabilities, It took us 6 years to change things. So we have a decision, and then the training, the failure of the training, a review of the training, the improvement of the training, and then the result, the improvement. Same thing for gender-based violence, same for enforced disappearances. There's a long period of time that goes by. You need to really question things before things improve. So when you think about these exercises, you need to talk much more about the methodologies than about the results. And the committees themselves and special procedures themselves should share experiences and look at how states have been successful or have failed in the process. Because when you fail, it gives you huge opportunity to learn. I'll close now and take the floor this afternoon.
The more that process is equally important than results and product. I think we are on the same page, and I think it is extremely important that we are not talking about ticking the box and just applying recommendation. We're talking about the culture of human rights. We're talking about exactly reaching the most local level to imprint the people with the belief in those values and human rights. We focused a little bit on the technical aspect because this is part of the capacity building, but it doesn't reduce the NMIRF only to the technical part. I think many speakers said that earlier this morning. I would have liked to give the floor to my two panelists, but it seems we're already running out of time. And I regret. I hope you know that this afternoon you will have yet another very interesting session at 3 p.m., which will be moderated by Mr. Felix Kirchmeier from the Geneva Human Rights Platform. And then it will be followed by session 3 on insights of the context of the virtual hub and future decision of the Human Rights Council on the issue of NMIRF, which will be moderated by His Excellency Omar Zniber, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Morocco to the United Nations in Geneva and former chair of the Human Rights Council. So I would like to share with you also that in addition to all of this afternoon, you also have a side event which is being organized by UNFPA in this room, room 17. And I see room 17 from 2 to 3 p.m. Maybe there's a mistake in the room. UNFPA will discuss its recent publication, as was announced in the morning, on support to NMIRF in-country presence. So I wish you all a pleasant lunch break, and it was really very interesting for me as chair of CEDAW to liaise with all of you. Thank you very much. Et bon appétit.